All right, everyone, ready to get into it? Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that's been making headlines, the DOGE dividend.
Yeah, the potential $5,000 checks coming from Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency.
DOGE, as everyone's been calling it. So we've got articles here from Newshick, CNET, PBS, even the Austin American-Statesman.
Wow, quite the stack.
Yeah, so is this DOGE dividend actually feasible? Where's the money coming from? And who's going to benefit from it?
A lot of questions.
A lot of questions, yeah, a lot to unpack here.
And, the big one for me is, has DOGE actually saved anything yet? Or are we talking about future projections here?
Right, it all hinges on whether those savings are real.
Exactly.
So let's start with the basics.
Sure.
Who would actually get one of these DOGE dividend checks?
So Newsweek's reporting says it would go to the 79 million U.S. households that pay federal income taxes.
So wait a second, that means a big chunk of Americans wouldn't even qualify, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's right. It'd be about 40% of Americans wouldn't be eligible.
And some people aren't too happy about that.
No, not at all.
Representative Jasmine Crockett, she's a Democrat from Texas.
Right.
She's arguing that, what good is a $5,000 check if it means cuts to programs people need?
Like those social safety net programs?
Exactly, the ones that a lot of people really rely on.
Yeah, it's a valid point.
So it's not as simple as just putting money in people's pockets, right? We have to think about where that money's coming from and the potential consequences.
Absolutely.
I mean, does this criteria even seem fair, leaving so many people out?
It definitely raises questions about equity and who benefits from these government initiatives.
Yeah, it's not a simple answer.
Not at all.
But okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about where the money for these DOGE dividend checks would even come from.
Sure.
Because we're talking about a lot of money here, right?
Oh, yeah, a $5,000 check for almost 80 million households. That's hundreds of billions of dollars.
Right, it's a massive amount. And the whole proposal rests on DOGE delivering these big government savings they've been promising.
Right. They originally set a goal of $2 trillion.
$2 trillion. Wow.
I know. Even Elon Musk later admitted that was a little too optimistic.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, he revised the goal to a more feasible $1 trillion in savings.
Okay, so still a huge number.
Absolutely.
But here's where things get interesting, right?
Okay, lay it on me.
DOGE is claiming they've already saved $55 billion as of February 22nd, 2025.
$55 billion. So is that money just sitting somewhere ready to be handed out?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
A couple of sources, including PBS and the Austin American-Statesman, are saying that this $55 billion number hasn't actually been independently verified.
So are we talking about actual savings or just projections?
That's the billion-dollar question, and a lot of economists are skeptical.
Skeptical that the savings are real.
Yeah, that DOGE can actually achieve the kind of savings they're promising.
Okay, so let's get into that skepticism. Why are they so doubtful?
Well, there's this quote in a PBS article from Douglas Elmendorf. He's the former director of the Congressional Budget Office.
Okay, yeah, I know him.
He basically says that a big chunk of federal spending is for benefits and taxes, things DOGE can't really control.
So even if they are streamlining things and cutting some fat here and there,
It might not actually lead to the massive windfall they need for these $5,000 checks.
it makes you wonder, where exactly has this $55 billion come from?
And has it actually been added to the Treasury, or is it like just a theoretical number?
Yeah, that's a big question mark right there.
A big one.
We need more transparency about how they got to that number.
Absolutely.
Is it from efficiency improvements, cuts to existing programs, or something else entirely?
It's hard to assess the real impact without more information.
I agree. It feels like we're being asked to just trust them without seeing the proof.
And speaking of trust, this whole idea hinges on the assumption that people will report government waste if it means a bigger check for themselves.
Right, it's like a crowdsourced efficiency program.
Like turning citizens into waste watchers?
Yeah, but is that really how it works? Do people behave that way?
Right, it's a big assumption.
Yeah.
And then there's James Fishback, the CEO of Azoria Investments.
He's the one who came up with the DOGE dividend idea, right?
Yeah, according to the PBS article, he actually thought of it at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate.
Interesting.
So his argument is that these dividend checks would incentivize people to be more vigilant about government waste.
Okay, I see the logic there, but it's a big if.
Exactly, and not everyone's buying it.
Yeah, I can see why.
There's this CNN host, Michael Smirkenis. He called the whole thing a Ponzi scheme.
Wow, strong words.
Yeah, he's particularly worried about the national debt, which is like, what, $36 trillion right now?
Yeah, something like that.
His point is that any savings should go towards paying that down, not back to taxpayers.
It's a valid concern.
It really is, and it raises a question for everyone listening, I guess,
Would you report waste for a bigger check, or would you rather see it go towards the debt?
It's a tough choice.
No easy answers there.
It really makes you think about our priorities as a country. Are we thinking short-term or long-term?
That's the core issue, isn't it?
And then to add another layer of complexity, we got to talk about inflation.
Right, because Trump previously blamed Biden's stimulus checks for inflation.
And now his administration is basically proposing something similar.
Quite a turnaround.
It is. So what do the experts think about the potential for inflation with this DOGE dividend?
Well, there are some conflicting opinions.
Okay, break it down for us.
Kevin Hassett, he was Trump's economic advisor.
Okay.
He says it wouldn't be inflationary because the government would have spent the money anyway.
So it's more about who's spending it than the total amount.
Right, that's his argument.
Okay.
But then you have other economists like Ernie Tedeschi from the Yale Budget Lab,
Okay.
and he says giving people more money right now could actually make inflation worse.
Okay, explain that one. Why would putting more money in people's pockets lead to higher prices?
It's about supply and demand, right? If everyone suddenly has more money, but the supply of goods and services stays the same.
Businesses can raise prices because people are willing to pay more?
Exactly. Classic demand pull inflation.
Right?
And Tedeschi's also worried about labor shortages.
Ah, yeah.
If businesses are struggling to find workers and meet the increased demand because everyone has more money.
Then prices go up even more?
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle.
So it's a delicate balance, right? The total amount of money, but also that balance between supply and demand.
Absolutely. And right now, with the labor shortages and all the supply chain issues,
Yeah, it's a risky time to be injecting a bunch of money into the economy.
it could really throw things off balance.
Classic economic debate, right? Stimulus versus inflation.
Short-term gain versus long-term stability.
So where does this leave us with the DOGE dividend? What are the next steps?
Well, it's important to remember that this is all still very early stages.
Right, it's just an idea at this point.
It needs congressional approval to actually happen.
And as we've seen, there's definitely some pushback.
Oh yeah, a lot of people have concerns.
So what's Fishback doing to try and make this happen?
Well, according to Newsweek, he's in D.C. right now lobbying for his idea.
Making the rounds?
Yeah, it seems like he has more support from Republicans than Democrats.
Interesting.
But he's hoping to get bipartisan buy-in.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle.
It's a complicated situation, so many factors at play.
Politics, economics, even just the logistics of how you'd actually implement this program.
It's not as simple as it sounds,
Not at all.
but it all comes back to this fundamental question.
Okay, what's that?
Even if DOGE does manage to save a significant amount of money,
Yeah.
is sending checks to taxpayers really the best way to use it?
That's the big question, isn't it?
We're talking about potentially hundreds of billions of dollars.
Right, so do we give it back to taxpayers, use it to pay down the debt, invest in programs, or maybe a combination?
And what are the long-term consequences of each choice?
Those are the things we need to be thinking about.
It's not just about the immediate impact, it's about the future.
Exactly, we need to consider the bigger picture. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What are we actually trying to achieve here?
Right, like what are our goals as a country?
Are we focused on just putting money back in people's pockets, or are we thinking bigger picture, about long-term solutions?
Yeah, and this whole idea that people will just suddenly start reporting government waste because they might get a bigger check.
It seems a bit like a gamble to me.
It does feel a bit naive, right? Like assuming everyone's going to jump on board with that.
Yeah, human behavior is a lot more complicated than that.
Exactly. People have different motivations, different priorities,
And let's not forget, some people might not even know how to report waste effectively.
or they might be afraid to speak up,
Whistleblowers often face retaliation. That's a real concern,
It's a good point. It's not always easy to speak truth to power.
especially when there's a potential personal cost involved.
Exactly. So it's not as simple as just saying report waste and get rewarded.
There are a lot of nuances to consider.
Definitely. And this brings us back to the whole question of where this $55 billion in savings has actually come from.
Right. Has it actually been deposited in the Treasury?
Or is it just a number on a spreadsheet somewhere?
We need more details about how DOGE calculated these savings.
Transparency is key here.
Absolutely. We need to know if it's from real efficiency improvements or just accounting tricks.
Or maybe cuts to programs that people depend on.
That's a possibility we can't ignore.
It's not a simple solution.
Definitely not. There are a lot of factors to consider.
But ultimately, it comes down to a choice, right? What do we prioritize as a nation?
Short-term relief or long-term sustainability?
It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer.
We need to have a real conversation about our values and what we want the future to look like.
Exactly, and that conversation needs to involve everyone, not just the politicians and economists.
It affects us all, so we all need to be part of the solution. It's a real balancing act, trying to find the best path forward.
Yeah, so much to weigh and consider.
And with this DOGE dividend, there's just so much we still don't know.
Right, like are these savings real or are they just smoke and mirrors?
Exactly. And if they are real, are they sustainable or is it just a one-time thing?
And even if they are real and sustainable, is sending checks to taxpayers the best way to use that money?
Right. There are so many other things we could do with it: pay down the debt, invest in infrastructure, education, healthcare.
It's a tough call for sure. And then there's the whole inflation question.
Yeah, add more money to the economy. It could really make things worse, especially with everything else going on.
Right. Labor shortages, supply chain issues. It's a delicate situation.
It's a lot to think about. No easy answers here.
So where do we go from here? What should people be paying attention to as this debate unfolds?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed and think critically.
Don't just believe everything you read.
Exactly. Dig deeper, ask questions, look for evidence.
Like, how did DOGE come up with this $55 billion figure?
Right. Where did those savings come from?
Have they actually been put into the Treasury, or are they just hypothetical?
Those are all crucial questions. And even more importantly, I think we need to think about the long-term consequences.
Not just the immediate impact, but what kind of future are we creating with these choices?
Are we making short-sighted decisions that will hurt us in the long run?
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a potential $5,000 check.
But we need to look beyond that and consider the bigger picture.
What are our values? What kind of society do we want to build?
Those are the real questions we need to be asking ourselves.
Well said. It's a complex issue with a lot of moving parts, and we've only scratched the surface today.
Yeah, we could talk about this for hours.
Definitely. But hopefully this deep dive has given everyone some food for thought.
And some questions to keep asking.
Exactly. This is a debate that affects all of us, so stay informed, stay engaged, and make your voice heard.
The future is in our hands.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and until next time, keep those thinking caps on.